Hi, Garmlings. It's me again. Who else would it be? Listen, I haven't heard anyone else say it, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I feel like, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I feel like the second half of 2025 lacked a bit of aroma. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. Like, no JL, no Simples in tier 7. Magix is gone. Phase were horrible. And don't get me wrong, Furia was lit, okay? I love Furia as much as the next guy, but it is very hard sometimes for, you know, one team to carry all the aroma, all the smells on their back alone. But like overall, it was still a good season, okay? Like it was good. I enjoyed myself. There were still good storylines we can talk about. But before we get into all the things that we learned about the second half of the 2025 season, we first have to go back to where it all starts. Barmlings, oh boy, do I have some news for you. Looking to upgrade your current inventory with instant trades, lower prices than Steam, all with a giant selection of over 1 million skins to choose from? Check out today's sponsor, CS Money. Along with their instant trade feature, if you just want to buy some new skins straight up, there are various deposit methods such as card, PayPal, and crypto. Looking to get out of the skins game completely? Don't worry, CS Money also offers an instant selling feature. Recently, they even increased the prices on user skins, meaning as of today, you can sell your skins at a better price and receive even more cash. With this cash, you can instantly turn around and buy more skins or cash this balance out to your bank. You can check them out today by clicking the link in the description. Thank you to CS Money for sponsoring, and back to the video. How we ended the first half was Vitality, best team in the world by a million billion miles. It looked like Mongols were finally kind of breaking through their ceiling to be one of the elite premier teams of the world. Mouse was still consistently a top 4 team, but don't bank on them to win tournaments. And while Donk is still Donk, he still can fry you whenever he feels like it. Then of course, after the Austin Major, we have the Rostermania at the end of the season, like every other season, and we had some pretty good moves here. Let's see here. Let's start with a tier 2 move. Zelo moved from Gun 5 to Parry Vision. This wouldn't matter, you know, at the time. No one really cared, but gave this move a little bit of time. Luka Ozy benched on MIBR. Slend benched on Gamer Legion. Xfloud benched on Heroic. Saw and Senpaius leave Heroic to join G2. Hooksy joins Astralis. Joko parts ways with 3D Max. Magisk is benched on Falcons, and he's replaced by Kiosuke, whatever you want to say. Shay Jesus is benched on Imperial. Flamus is benched on VP for Perfecto. Decenti is benched on Imperial. Grix joins Heroic. Toby's the coach joins Heroic. Makaze joins the main Navi lineup for JL. And the rest of that entire Navi junior team signs to Foot Esports. Nilo joins the active roster on Heroic. Cello transfers from Furia to Imperial. Stanislaw and Fuzi were benched on Wildcard. Dear Lord. AW transfers from Amcall to Parry Vision. No one cares at the time. Similar to Zelo, but give this move some time. Friend would transfer from Wildcard Academy to Wildcard. Peeping would join Wildcard. SHR would join Imperial. Rek is benched on M80 and he is replaced by Hext. OC is benched on NRG and replaced by Zodic. And Carson would then go on to replace Hext. Magix is benched on Spirit and replaced by Zwei. Liaz is benched on FlyQuest for JKS. Brokey moves back to the Navi bench where he would eventually join BC Game, and Brokey is moved back to the active roster. Flashy would join Liquid as a coach. The replacement opera on Gamer Legion for Slend would be Kersey. Decenti and Luka Ozy would join Fluxo. Maitzi joins the main Ents team. Erazdose is benched on NIP and would eventually join OG, and X Kapersky would replace him. Snacks is benched on G2 and eventually replaced by Matties from Fnatic. Nyx would join MIBR. Glaive was benched on Ents and replaced by Regon. Susp would then eventually also be benched on Wildcard. This is just a Wildcard mess. Stanislaw moved back to the active roster. But anyways, yeah, there was a fuck ton of stuff that happened. The first tournament of this new season would be Fissure Playground 1, which was like a tier 1.5 to tier 2 tournament. And it was a little strange because we had Furia, Pain, Heroic, and VP all underachieving and not making playoffs. And instead, the final 4 teams we had here was Tyloo, Saw, Astralis, and BetBoom. Truly a tier 1.5 to tier 2 tournament. And in the finals, we would have Tyloo versus Astralis. It looked like the Hooksy move for Astralis was going to be generational and possibly save them. Along with it also looking like Jam Young was one of the best players in the world, and maybe Tyloo could finally make their mark on the tier 1 scene. Also, most of this event was played with Tyloo's coach instead of G, who could not make it, until Tyloo was literally in the semifinals. This was a wild event win from Tyloo. Jam Young was easily the best player here. They 1.44 rating. He just looked like a demon. But then again, it was like a tier 1.5-ish event, so we can't take too much away from this. All we learned is maybe Astralis is back. Tyloo and Jam Young look incredibly good. And what's going on with Furia? Heroics new roster, how is it? And VP's new team looks just as bad as they have this entire past year. That leads us straight into IEM Cologne, the first big boy tournament of the year. And well, honestly, it seemed to be most of the same old, same old. In Group A, the upper bracket final would be Vitality versus Mongols, a major rematch, where once again Vitality would win. It looked like Vitality had not lost a step at all. They didn't lose a map in the entire group stage. They were still here to dominate. Then in the lower bracket of Group A, we had new look Falcons with Kiyosuke versus Furia. The newborn fetus on the team would try and carry them to this win, but it just wasn't enough. Furia would look like they actually were back on track. Fissure Playground 1 was just a blip on the radar, and they would even go through to beat G2 in the lower finals to make the playoffs here. Overall, though, the new G2 with Sunpius and Saw and Maddie's did look very good, and you can't get too upset about losing to Furia in the lower bracket. The main concern was with Falcons because this is supposed to be the super team of all super teams, and the newest player absolutely did his part, okay? Kyo was playing out of his mind. At this event, he was the second highest rated player there, and you know, everyone else kind of sold. Monesi, Nico, what are we doing? Then in Group B, as you might expect, we would get Mouse and Spirit in the upper finals, where Donk and Spirit would win. Zwei didn't look great, but it didn't really matter. Donk and Shiro are just simply goated. What else? Liquid didn't win a map here. They were still dog shit, unfortunately. FaZe with Brokey back in the lineup actually looked like they maybe had some potential. Brokey looked better now than when he got benched. People were saying he looked physically healthier. They're saying the break was good for him. Maybe FaZe would finally be back, but unfortunately they would lose in the lower bracket finals to Na'Vi, who looked very good with Makaze in the lineup. Heroic was also here. New Heroic lineup with no Saw, no Sunpius, and no Xflow. Just kind of looked horrible at this point. Aurora was here, but they lost back-to-back games to Spirit and FaZe. And well, the first big tier 1 tournament playoffs would be Mouse, Furia, Vitality, Mongols, Na'Vi, and Spirit. I feel like that, for the most part, sounds about right. In the quarters, like they always do, Mouse would find a way to win and at the bare minimum make the semis here. And then Na'Vi would upset the Mongols in a crazy series. Map 1 went to like 8 overtimes. Bit played out of his mind. Makaze, the new rookie edition, also played out of his mind in this series. That edition at this point was honestly looking phenomenal. And the Mongols, what's going on? We just made the finals of a major, and now we're losing to Na'Vi with a rookie, his first ever time on stage. There were slight concerns, but it wasn't, you know, anything too insane. It was still the Mongols. Then Spirit would go on to beat Na'Vi, and Mouse would upset Vitality in the semis. Maybe Mouse could finally break through that ceiling and actually win a tier 1 tournament, but they would get stomped in the finals 3-0 by Spirit, and Donk would cook with a 1.6 in that match. It was the start of the season, and Zwei had a 100% tournament winning rate since joining Spirit. The next event we have is Blast Bounty, where we would get one of the worst series in Counter-Strike history. Not as bad as NIP Call, I would say, but Ecstatic Liquid surely was close. Here Liquid would win 2-0, but I mean, if you truly want to see how horrible this series is, Fi made a phenomenal video on it. You can go watch that. It was a disaster class, let me tell you what. Other than that, throughout this online stage, nothing too crazy happened. Furia was continuing their slow start by losing to Liquid in stage 2 of the online stage. Astralis ended up beating Na'Vi. VP would beat FaZe, and other than that, it was all for the most part what you would think. Another thing as well, Complexity would be playing here, and they would lose in stage 1, and unfortunately, this would be the last event Complexity would play, as Jason Lake would unfortunately announce that they were going to be leaving Counter-Strike for the foreseeable future. And then JT, Halzer, Grim, and Nicholas X would all be moving to Passion UA to play with Kavem. All this proved to us was, I guess Passion UA meant business. And well, NACS was, it just keeps getting worse and worse by the day. I can't take it anymore, guys. Then in the LAN playoffs of this event, we would have a grand final, Spirit versus Mongols. Mongols was finally back in a final after Austin, but unfortunately for them, this would kind of go the same way as Austin. And well, for Spirit, it went the same way that Cologne did. They would beat the Mongols fairly easily, going 3-0. Another Donk masterclass. Shiro was in there helping out, and maybe the minus Magics plus Zwei move was the greatest move of all time, because Spirit have played in 2 tier 1 lands and have won both of them. Zwei still 100% win rate since joining Spirit. And honestly, at this point, it looked like Vitality was taking a step back, and Spirit with Donk were kind of taking a leap into that #1 spot in the entire world at this point. But of course, as it goes, when your entire team basically runs through one player, it is hard to stay consistent. Your team can be very shaky. So we'd have to see if they can keep it up. After this, we'd have Saudi's very own Esports World Cup. Not a real World Cup of, you know, know, everyone of the same nationality, but just what they decided to call the tournament, just a regular tier 1 tournament. The format here was complete dog shit. It was just one giant single elim bracket. And while that did cause some weird things to happen, where somehow Aurora decided to make the finals. Sure, they had been a good team for a while now, but you know, Aurora does kind of have problems in the playoffs of events. And I guess the format here was just goofy enough to where the pressure wasn't on them until the finals game, of course, where they would get beaten 3-0 by the Mongols. They would finally win a tier 1 tournament. They do have another trophy on their HLTV page in Yala Compass 2024, but that was one of the tier 1.5 events. It's not really counted by most people, but even with the weird format, this was absolutely a genuine tier 1 tournament win for the Mongols in their first one ever. It seemed they were finally truly breaking through that ceiling and becoming one of the best top 3 teams in the world, and we'd finally get to see them pull through and win tournaments. Along with this would be Mouse's first not top 4 finish in like a millennia, as they would lose out to Falcons in the quarters. Vitality would make the semis but lose to Mongols, and they were once again kind of looking shaky after dominating the first half of the year and literally winning 7 tournaments in a row. They had not made the finals for the first 3 tournaments of the second half of 2025. What was going on? Were they burnt out? What happened to them? All I know is I'm not complaining. This was fine by all means for me. Something else that was a little strange. Navi, after a good start to the year, continued to struggle, losing to 3D Max in their first game. FaZe continuing to struggle, of course, losing to Aurora in their first game. And Spirit, who had just won the last 2 tournaments in a row, lost to Heroic in the first game. But this wasn't just like a Spirit disaster class. There was internal issues kind of within the team. It had been rumored for a while that Zontix was going to get benched. No one really knew why, because it wasn't really due to performance issues. And well, it was then confirmed that after this tournament, he would be replaced by Tanir. Zontix would eventually tweet out saying he just needed a break from competition due to personal reasons, and said that he should be back in the winter, so that would be after this season ends. And well, anyways, basically this would just end Spirit's run of tournament wins, and there would be a couple tournament break for Spirit, but in the next one they did play at ESL Pro League, it would be Tanir in instead of Zontix. Also around this time, SHR did not work out on Imperial, and he was eventually replaced by Skulls. And along with this, due to FaZe being stinky doo-doo, Alige would be benched for Jacob. Maybe this will save you, fellas. There was also a goofy little Blast tournament after this Blast Open London 2025 finals, where in the LAN playoffs here, M80 made a surprise appearance after looking very good in the online portion. They had to play Mouse in the first game, where they lost 1-2, but it was still a great showing, and maybe North America could finally build off of this performance. FaZe had made it here with Jacob, where they lost to G2 0-2. Kind of expected. You're a new roster. It is what it is. Then in the semis, Vitality would beat Mouse, finally making it back to the finals of a tournament, and the new G2 roster would end up beating Furia. And after being a giant underdog in this finals game, G2 would go down 1-2 to then win Inferno in overtime and win Map 5 Train 13-6 to upset Vitality and win their first S-tier tournament since 2024, when they had Nico and Monacy still on the team. That was also a Blast event. This team just farms Blast events, but hey, it's cool to see a team like G2 win. We were maybe finally seeing the vision of Pekka and what he imagined this team could become. Maddie's, Heavy God, Malbs, a deadly trio of riflers who at any point, any single one of them can pop off and destroy you. Hunter looked like he was fitting into his new IGL role with the help of Saw fairly well. And Sun Pius was fine. He wasn't like an insane game-changing opera, but he was certainly good enough. But yeah, anyways, the next 3 tournaments aren't Blast events, so don't expect G2 in the finals. Next, we'd have Fissure Playground 2, and this time it was significantly more serious than it was the last time. A lot more tier 1 teams were here, and G2, Mongols, Aurora, tier 2 team Liquid, Furia was here, Falcons was here, FaZe was here. I mean, my goodness, it was now like a tier 1.25 tournament, we can say. Anyways, the semifinals here would be the Mongols, Liquid, they finally did something, don't expect too much of this, Furia and Falcons. Then, of course, Mongols would beat Liquid, Furia would beat Falcons, and the finals would be incredibly close, with Furia barely taking it 3-2 over the Mongols. This would be Furia's first tournament win of the season. Don't worry, there will be many more to come. After the Esports World Cup, we actually had a decent amount of moves go down. Electronic would finally be benched on VP. To replace Electronic would be Toro from VP Prodigy, their academy team. Shay Jesus would go from Imperial to Red Canids. Stown would be benched on Astralis, and they would bring back Magisk. Wildcard would add Fiku. Carson would leave NRG, and he would be replaced by Sonic. Nyx would leave MIBR, along with Safe, and they would try to be a budget Furia, adding Klim and Kickert. Kersey, after not such a great stint on Gamer Glamour Legion would be benched and replaced by Hypex. And in the middle of Fissure Playground number 2, it would be announced that Liquid and FaZe were doing a player swap. Elige would be going back to Liquid, and Twist would be going back to FaZe. Oh yeah, also Grix was benched on Heroic and replaced by Elkarin. I don't know when exactly that happened again, but it happened at some point. Yeah, this Twist and Elige move was pretty wild at the time. It in turn made Liquid and FaZe dead teams, where they would have to play each other in the 2-2 match of Fissure, with Liquid winning, Twist playing out of his mind. The only time Liquid did anything all season was here, and it's because they were a dead team. Oh yeah, and the player Twist would be replacing was, of course, Rain. This was, you know, this was rough scenes. This was a sad time. I'll talk about this event for approximately 15 seconds. Starladder Starseries Fall, pretty much just a tier 2 event, and they slid Na'Vi into it. And of course, Na'Vi would win in the finals versus NIP. Great. The next event was ESL Pro League Season 22, and the playoffs are pretty much at this point what you would expect. Spirit was here, FaZe was here with Jacob, Furia was here, Vitality was here, of course Mouse was here, Na'Vi made it here, Falcons made it here, and the one team you might not expect is 3D Max. Somehow they beat G2 in the 2-2 game to make it here. A little concerning for G2 after, you know, just winning a tournament, but like I said, this wasn't a blast event, so what can you do? Another concerning thing was the Mongols weren't in the playoffs, as they had also lost in their 2-2 game to Na'Vi. Na'Vi's a good team. I don't want to knock you too hard, but at the end of the day, you also are Mongols. You just won a tier 1 event recently. Na'Vi has not. Also, Tanir was now officially on Spirit. He had left Heroic to join them. In turn, Xfloud was rebrought into the Heroic lineup. And while Spirit would lose to FaZe in the quarterfinals of this event, with Tanir and Zwei bottom fragging in that series. And you might be saying, oh my goodness, FaZe are back. They've looked mediocre all season, and now they're beating Spirit in the quarters of a tier 1 event. FaZe had a dead team buff. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Right before this event, they had benched Rain, their longest standing player who has been on the team since they joined Counter-Strike. And well, due to some issues of them changing too many players, FaZe did not have enough of their original core from when they were invited. So Rain would be standing in for Jacob, and they would dead team buff all the way to the semifinals, where they would lose to Vitality, who at this point would make back-to-back finals. And the team they would be playing would be Falcons. We've had some cinema grand finals between Vitality and Falcons up to this point, but this would not be one of them. Vitality would win 3-0 against Falcons fairly easily, and at this point it looked like Vitality was maybe creeping their way back into that #1 team slot. We had some bullshit ass events in this time frame as well. CS Asia Championships 2025. Liquid was here, they'd come in 3rd place. FaZe was here, they'd come in 7th to 8th place, somehow looking like they had gotten worse. And the finals would be Legacy versus 3D Max. Legacy would win their first ever tier 1 event. We also had Thunderpick World Championship, which had tier 1 teams like Furia, Na'Vi, the Mongols, and Aurora, and then teams like Venom, 9Z, Imperial, and OG. As you would expect, the 4 tier 1 teams came in the top 4 slots of the tournament, and the final would be Furia versus Na'Vi, where Furia would reverse sweep after going 0-2 down to beat Na'Vi 3-2, continuing their very strong run of form. We also had PGL Masters Bucharest, which was just another tier 1.5 event, where Aurora would play in the finals versus Legacy, beating them 3-2, giving Zantares his first ever tier 1 LAN trophy. It's kind of it doesn't really feel right that is his first one. It's also kind of a fake first one, but you know, I guess we need some positives for Aurora at this point. Then the last 2 events before the Budapest Major, IEM Chengdu and Blast Rivals Fall. Both of these tournaments would be won by Furia, and at this point they were just incredibly hot with their new roster. Molodoy looked like one of the greatest operas in the world, easily Rookie of the Year, easily a top 5 opera in the world. Fallen looked like a generational caller again. He was back. Yakinder was playing very, very well. Quesarado looks like a top 5 rifler in the world. I mean, this team is just cooking at this point. And something else I probably should also mention, after the Mongols looked like they had finally broken through their ceiling, Mongols announced that Senzu would be benched, and it seemed like it wasn't their decision. It was Senzu's decision to bench himself, and as of today, we know that this was due to burnout. So this just kind of shot Mongols in the foot, literally right before the biggest, well, I guess tied for the biggest event of the year with Austin. They would replace him with 28-year-old rookie Controles, who all things considered didn't actually look bad at Chengdu, but you know, it wasn't looking great for them. Then we also, of course, have Blast Rivals Season 2, where Furia would beat Falcons in the final and propel themselves into being the hottest team in the entire scene and easily the #1 team in the world. So this would lead us all into the Budapest Major. The storylines going into this. Furia is red hot. This is kind of their major to lose. And if they do win, Fallen is absolutely in the GOAT IGL debate. Would Vitality be able to run it back for their second major in a row and officially define 2025 as the Vitality era? Could Falcons finally get over the hump? They had been good since adding Kiyosuke, but hadn't won a tier 1 tournament, although at least recently they were able to make the finals of them. But they were kind of like Mouse. They were consistently a top 4 team at the worst. They just couldn't really find a way to win them. I just spoke of them, but Mouse, of course, this was a home major for Torji. Would that give them superpowers to finally win a tournament? Or, you know, would them and Falcons just keep holding hands losing in the semis constantly? Could the Mongols do anything with Control S? Spirit with Taniran's Way looked a little shaky, but, you know, they still had Donk. How real of a team was G2? Could FaZe get back into form after looking pretty brutal this entire year? We'd all find out at the glorious Budapest. Well, Budapest is over, and we actually learned quite a bit. Gamer Legion is crumbling in front of our very eyes. This is cope, but I feel like NA does have hope with M80 and NRG. They both showed good things, at least I thought. Aurora, I know they did win a tier 1.5 event, but they ended off a pretty disappointing 2025, I felt like. And I'm sure some form of roster moves are coming for them. Astralis is crumbling, and I don't really know what the future holds for them. James is still a damn good caller. Liquid still has pretty brutal issues. I don't really know where they go from here. 3D Max is 24th major in a row, going 1-3 in stage 3. This might be a little harsh, but G2 isn't a great team. They're just a very good team. They had a chance to book their spot in the playoffs as they started 2-0 and lost every single BO3 they played. The draw was tough. They had to play Furia, Mongols, and Falcons. But if you're a great team, you should be able to win one of those. Maybe we'll see G2 make some form of roster move after this, but I really don't know what to expect from them. Overall, though, I do think they can improve going forward. They're just not a great team yet. And then, well, we get to the playoff teams. There are a lot of storylines going into this, like I said. And we'll start with the first quarterfinal game, Spirit versus Falcons. Somehow, Donk just keeps getting better. I just don't know how. This was his best major to date. And if you look at his majors in CS2, I mean, the ratings just keep going up and up and up. Now, there's pretty much a 0% chance he is the HLTV #1 ranked player of the year. And I do think Zaibu deserves it. But I do think mechanically, Donk is still just the best player I've ever watched play this game. But I mean, of course, as we know, there's a lot more to the game than that. But you can also say that, you know, half of Team Spirit is terrorists. In Spirit's game against Vitality in the semis, Spirit had that Mirage, and it was just an abysmal T-side from the boys and from Chopper. It was a brutal watch. They lose that first map, it's just over. So overall, I think we are getting to the point where Spirit really might have a Chopper problem. And, well, how do they fix it? We'll have to wait and see. As for Falcons, I feel like we didn't really learn much. The Falcons choke was inevitable with, you know, the players they have on this team and just kind of the organization as a whole. At this point, it's looking like Nico might never win a major. And I know everyone hates Falcons, but if Nico does ever lock in enough to win a major final, that day will truly be a magical day, okay? Even if you hate Falcons, you do have to admit a player like Nico, after years and years and years of struggling to finally win the biggest tournament in Counter-Strike, for him to finally overcome that and do it, it will be a magical moment. But then again, that's a big if. It might just never happen at this point. Going to Vitality Mongols, it seems like the Mongols are still very good, but all the work that they did to make Senzu stop choking in the playoffs, they now have to deal with in Control-as. And I don't know if they signed Control-as full-time. I don't know what's gonna happen. He played great in the groups, but when the pressure was really dialed up, he definitely struggled. It was a disaster class for him in that game. But overall, the system on Mongols is great. I feel like they can slot any player in as the 5th and they will be fine. But if Senzu comes back, even better. Furia and Na'Vi, after being the #1 ranked team and the favorite to win the tournament, Furia got knocked out by Na'Vi, and it kind of looks like the nerves got to them a little bit. This didn't look like the Furia that we are used to seeing. I'm sure they'll be fine going into next season. I do expect them to win more tournaments, but I am interested to see how their mental is going into Cologne and if anything really changes. Along with that, Na'Vi looked phenomenal here, but I'll get to them more later. And then Mouse and FaZe. The classic Mouse just looked dominant throughout the groups, and then when it came to playoffs, I did expect them to make these semifinals at least, but here's one of the biggest things that we learned. Even though they can look dog shit an entire season, an entire year even, Kerrigan Black Magic at majors is just unbelievable, man. It is undefeated at this point. You know, somehow FaZe go from being in stage 1 looking horrible, barely making it through, to beating Mouse in the quarters, going on to beat Na'Vi, who looked very, very good, and going on to make the grand finals. But to be honest with you, all we really learned from FaZe is that FaZe Magic is still a thing. It's always been a thing, but like all the same questions I had prior to FaZe making this run at this tournament, tournament, I still have. Like, what kind of form are we gonna see from these players after this major? It's yet to be seen. Will they make any roster moves? I really doubt it after this run. I feel like they still should, but I don't know, man. I still have so many question marks about FaZe. I feel like all we learned is that, you know, they can still fluke a major run here and there. And maybe the most important thing that we learned, even though they looked kind of off for the second half of this year, 2025 was Vitality's year. They've won 2 majors in a row. We are in a Vitality French era at this point. Is this my 9/11? Yes. But props to him, man. This team is just unbelievably good. They are so dominant. I've been fighting this battle for years and years and years of Simple being better than ZywOo. But at this point, I mean, with back-to-back major wins, 3 major MVPs, in my mind at least, ZywOo has officially overtaken him as the GOAT of Counter-Strike as a whole. And while I do still think in my brain mechanically Donk is better, at this point, ZywOo is probably also the GOAT of CS2. And along with this, that motherfucker Rops is a demon, okay? At the end of the day, Rops is just a winner. He has made the major final of every single major in CS2, winning 2 with Vitality, losing 2 with FaZe. I mean, the minus Spinks plus Robs move for Vitality was generational. And listen, I'm not gonna jerk myself off here, but I did kind of make a generational take back all the way in February that minus Spinks plus Robs was going to be the equivalent of the Astralis minus Kierby plus Magisk move. And I mean, if you look at the Astralis major pattern and the Vitality major pattern, if Vitality wins Cologne, they have the exact same major pattern as Astralis. So that move was quite literally nearly the exact same thing for Vitality as the Magisk move was for Astralis. So of course, after this video comes out, things are going to change. The Rostermania is going to drastically change the outlook of these teams going into 2026. But at this point, I just really have one question on my mind, and that's really just if Vitality can be the new greatest team in Counter-Strike history potentially. It's been without question Astralis, at least in my mind. But if they go on to have another dominant season and win another major, and I mean, they could even keep going potentially, they might just be the greatest team in Counter-Strike history. And ZywOo might just keep building a GOAT case that is so unbelievably strong. It is going to be hard for anyone to beat it, even Donk. This team's just phenomenal, man. And I just want to see if there is anyone out there who can stop them. Because people were saying that the Budapest playoffs were the most stacked playoffs we've had in a major for a very long time. And honestly, it didn't even look like Vitality really broke a sweat throughout the entire thing. So we'll see. Will it be Furia? Will it be Falcons? Will Senzu come back to Mongols and save them? Will Donk be able to hard carry Spirit? Can Na'Vi continue to improve? We'll have to see in 2026, fellas.